Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Generational Curse Words podcast. I'm your host, Olivia. We have Mustafaa here, our other host for this podcast, but welcome back for another conversation.
Welcome, folks. Excited to be here. Um,
Yes.
so let's start off. How you doing, Olivia? How's it going? How's your week?
My week is good. um,
Mm-hmm.
it's about to get really, really busy. So,
hmm hmm
I am preparing to take a flight down to North Carolina with a 7-month-old baby. Unfortunately, by myself because I'm going down there to buy a car.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I was telling Arthur, like, oh, at first I was like, we can go together, we could buy the car, yada, yada, yada. But then
Mhm.
when I started talking as if I didn't know when I was coming back, because I don't know how long it's going to take to buy a car, he was just like,
uh,
nah, can't.
mhm.
I can't commit to a schedule like that.
Mhm.
So,
What makes you want to buy
um,
a car down there? Why are you buying a car in North Carolina?
I don't know. I think it's the same reason you buy furniture in North Carolina. And maybe it's
Oh,
just an
really?
excuse. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not buying a couch. It would
Okay,
probably make way
I
more
thought you
sense if
might
I
know
was
some
buying a
secret
couch.
about. I thought you might know some secret about bargains or something, or car prices better in North Carolina or something.
I mean,
So,
I know some. Well, I don't know secrets, but my childhood friend Hugh, he's really like my younger sister's best friend.
uh-huh.
He is an accounting whiz. He knows everything about cars, and he said
Mm-hmm.
it would be good to buy a car that's not in the snow belt because there's less
Oh.
wear and tear. So,
Never
he
thought
said that
about
that's
that.
good. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
plus he's down in North Carolina. So
Mm-hmm.
I was not kidding. I was like, find my car, tell me where to show up and who to
Mm-hmm.
give my money to cuz
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I get a good car.
Yeah.
We're in the DMV, so I want a car that's not appealing to people who may be trying to drive
Mm-hmm.
it away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Right. You
I've
got to
just
think
been looking
about
at
that.
different cars. I know. And so I'm a little stressed to be like packing. We've done a weekend
Mm-hmm.
away with the kids, so that's been fine. But packing for a newborn to get on a flight, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going by myself, which
Mm-hmm.
is wild to think about. And
Mm-hmm.
plus, so I have my license, but it's bounced back because I have moved out of the District of Columbia and
Mm-hmm.
they're not willing to mail it to Maryland. And they also are telling me that I have to prove my residency again. And so when
Uh,
I first saw that, like, I instantly started to think of ways like, how can I get my license? Like, what
mm-hmm.
can I like? I'm not even gonna lie. I started to think about Adobe and a lease. Like, how can I make something shake real quick? But like,
Yeah.
child, my daddy's side, that blood is thick through me. Okay, and so I was like, you know what? Like, let me
Uh,
calm down. Let me calm down
mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, even though that's where my mind goes instantly,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not my path in life. Every single time I step
Right.
off my path of morality and integrity, I get slapped
Yep.
immediately. So
Yep.
I'm one of the people that I just can't do. I got to do things right by the book. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it would take less effort for me to just transfer my license to
Mm-hmm.
Maryland and be a
Mm-hmm.
Maryland resident
Mm-hmm.
and be a
Yeah.
Maryland resident than
Mm-hmm.
it would to trick the oh so weak system of the DC
Right.
DMV and get my license. So
Yeah.
tomorrow
Yeah.
I have to do all this MVA business to get my
Mm-hmm.
license because I at the end of the day, I'm buying a car. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm buying a car. That's been the
Mm-hmm.
goal since the very beginning. That's been the goal since before I had even taken my test to get my permit. Like the
Right.
goal is to get a car. The goal is not the step.
Right.
So this is just
Right.
a step. Either
Yeah.
way, I'm going down to North Carolina and I'm buying me a
Okay.
Toyota RAV4. That's
Okay.
happening. So
Okay. Okay.
adding extra stress, and I I'm realizing that I don't have anxiety. I'm just a master procrastinator. That's
Mm.
really it.
Mm.
There's no I don't have anxiety. I just
Yeah.
wait till the last
Yeah.
minute to do
Yeah.
everything.
So you took the test and everything in DC and passed it, right? The
Mm-hmm.
driver's test. So just now it's a matter of literally transferring the license because they issued you one, transferring it to Maryland.
Mm-hmm. They
Okay.
issued one. It bounced back, and because it bounced back, because they don't forward official DC DMV
Got
mail,
you. Got
I
you.
had to, yeah, which to me
Hmm.
still doesn't make sense
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I did everything by
Right.
the book.
Right.
I don't know. DC
Mm.
agencies need to trust DC residents a little bit more, even if
Hmm.
trust has been broken in a small percentage of things.
Hmm.
And I may be one of the reasons as I'm trying to vouch for me
Right.
not being a DC resident technically, but I'm just saying I did what I needed to do. Give me my license. At the
Yeah.
end of the
Yeah.
day, I paid my taxes in DC last
Yep.
year. I'm a DC resident, and that's what residency is about anyway.
Yeah.
I don't have everything that I needed to prove my residency. But let me stop. Let me stop because I'm trying to do wrong while
Right.
gaslighting the whole
Right.
system as if they
Right.
need to be more just and fair and kinder
Well,
to DC
you know,
residents.
there's something to be said about the system in that way. What I mean, in terms of what the system offers and in terms of what you pay. What I'm saying, for instance, I'm just thinking about uh, people who send their kids to a school that's not in their area because it's a better school, and they may use someone else's address. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
the systems are set up to kind of restrict what you have to do, but it's really the same country. It's really we're the same citizen, and everyone should be entitled to whatever they can manage to get,
Mm-hmm.
afford, or whatever. So what I'm saying is, if you can afford to get you gone through all the ropes to get a license, your license should be valid. If your license is valid anywhere else, why won't they give it to you? For instance, if you
Mm-hmm.
get a DC license, you'll be able to drive in Maryland. So why is it that you have to have a quote unquote Maryland license? And then, I mean, your residency can change on the spot. I mean, whether you're across the border on one side of Southern Avenue or the other side of Southern Avenue. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
I mean, I
I
hear what you're
just
saying. Yeah.
my in this instance, I did everything by
Hmm.
the book. And
Hmm.
because my stuff bounced back for whatever reason, now
Hmm.
I'm having to redo a process to prove my residency and my documents have changed. They have. I
Uh-huh.
don't live in the District of Columbia, but I did what I needed to do before my permit expired. I have
Right.
a license. You granted me a provisional license,
Right.
and to my knowledge, first of all, I was going to transfer to Maryland anyway. And
Hmm.
no one is pressed to keep their DC residency.
Right.
It's not that serious. I was going to transfer
Not
to
anymore.
Maryland
Yeah.
anyway, but
Yeah.
DC is the only place that I know that does not print your license for you so that you can walk out with it. I don't
Yeah.
know why it's mandatory that they mail it to you.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
understand that. Everyone that I
Yeah.
know walks out the
Yeah.
DMV with
Hmm.
their license
Hmm.
when they pass
That's now
their road
changed, and I
test.
don't know whether it's been since COVID or whatever, but there's no you go, you do your road test. Why they can't print it right there anymore, I don't know. I really
Mm-hmm.
don't know. That's I mean, it's a good question. Why do they have to send it in the mail? Why do they give you this paper provisional one,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then send the actual one in the mail when every place else, unless they've changed it, um, I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with
Mm-hmm.
this new universal coding or imprinting that they do to it. I don't know.
I don't. I mean, possibly, and
It still
cool,
doesn't make sense
but
because
yeah.
we have the technology that all they're putting in there is the data, and you have the
Mm-hmm.
technology to encode it with it. I mean, whatever it is that you're doing to it, you still could do it right then and there. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
So.
understand. Like, I completely understand. Um, Proof of identification,
Hmm.
proof of SSN, and things of that nature. But proof of residency just seems a little too. harsh for
Mm-hmm.
a city that is being slammed with the implications of gentrification
Mm-hmm.
from left and right.
Yep.
Like proof of residency just seems a little too
Yeah.
inaccessible.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
That's how
Mm-hmm.
I feel,
Mm-hmm.
because even when I look at it, even when I look at the list of the qualifying documents, I would say 90% of the documents require that you have the money to pay for something,
There it
or you
is.
have the credit
There it
score
is. Yep.
or
Yep.
you have the credit score
Yep.
to be approved for something.
Yep.
So they're asking
Ut-
for things relating to
Utilities,
loans, credit,
banks. Yep.
utilities,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
lease. Some people can
Yep.
only live a place if their name is not on the lease. So
Exactly.
I'm just yeah,
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
just seems a bit um
Mm-hmm.
just wrong. I'm trying to
Yeah.
be politically correct. And granted, listeners, we have made it very clear that Olivia is no longer pleading her case, right?
Right.
I
Right.
can easily transfer it with no problems. There
Yeah.
are other people that cannot. I have the
Mm-hmm.
documents to get a license in Maryland. There are
Mm-hmm.
some people that they don't have a document to get a license in Maryland, Virginia, DC, nowhere.
Yep.
So that whole proof of residency clause just seems
Yeah. Yeah.
it's wrong.
Prove that you are entitled to it.
Hmm.
You know. Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. So, what's on our agenda for today?
So
Do we want to talk about what's happening in the youth development world right quick?
what is happening? Because you have a very unique view into it right now, a very
Yeah,
close up view
yeah,
into it right
yeah.
now.
I've just had the privilege and honor, I guess, to accept the position as the senior advisor to the secretary of the Department of Juvenile Services in Maryland, a senior advisor on matters of positive youth development.
Hmm.
So, you're
Congratulations for like
right.
the
Thank
10th
you. Thank
time.
you.
Super
Thank
excited.
you. Yeah. So, part of what's happening in the juvenile system in Maryland is transforming the system such that it is more, not more, so that it's actually youth focused, developmental, and it is a system that treats young people like young people, and it's in the business of helping young people develop as opposed to a system that is merely punitive and seeks to just punish young people. Um, and it's interesting because in this time where young people are um, the focus of crimes like carjacking and gun possession, and there's a uptick in that. At the same time that's happening, there are adjudicators and lawmakers and people who are moving to really make penalties harder for young people to make them quote unquote more accountable, more punitive, and remove those laws that are in place right now to protect young people as young people. Um, Even though the juvenile system there is comes under the Department of Corrections, which is the adult system, um, we're trying to move the juvenile system. So again, so there's more youth friendly, akin to what really young people actually need. And again, there's, as I say, there's this movement to kind of push things back and make young people, even under the age of 13, make what before was not a felony, make them felony, and to be more punitive because they don't have a response to young people. There are not a lot of youth development youth development minded people who are over the concerns of young people. So that movement is happening in Maryland. The same thing's pretty much happening in DC. You hear, folks, politicians and people running around saying, what do we do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Um, and on one hand, when they're talking about, well, there needs to be more services, there needs to be more this, that, and the other, there's nothing really talking about the development of young people. And they are not really having young people in the conversation as to what's going on with them and why it is going to. Nobody, I mean, there was a recent article and podcast on NPR. I can't think of the name of uh, the newscaster or the host, and she actually did interview young people as to why are you carjacking, why are you doing the things you do, and there are two answers that were most prominent. One, out of boredom. Young people simply don't have anything, any sense of importance or thing that they can engage in, so that boredom. And then the other thing is out of necessity. We need money, we need means, we need to survive. So those two things really aren't being addressed in that sense. It's just, well, they just shouldn't do it, and we just need to punish them. So that's one of the things that's really, really happening. And so we're looking forward to doing innovative work at the Department of Juvenile Services in Maryland. I'm excited to be there. We got a great team of people that are coming in from um, different places all over the country who have been doing innovative work and try to do it in one place and make this a model for what should kind of happen throughout the rest of the country. Um, I will say at one point, we were doing this work here in DC. But again, when lawmakers and people who are really distant from actually working with young people are making decisions about young people, and you get a new government in and they appoint new people, and there's no regard as to the systems that were in there. I remember Oak Hill here in DC when it used to be Oak Hill, and then when it was New Beginnings, and we had all of these wonderful things that young people were doing, opportunities for them. I mean, imagine being committed to a system and you do things like you're involved in drama, you're involved in theater, you're involved in whitewater rafting, you're involved in kinds of experiences that you otherwise would not have had. And these kinds of things help really turn young people around, to give them a better scope of what's available to them in life, and just things that they could do. I mean, it was during a period of rebuilding Katrina. They actually went down and helped rebuild Katrina. So the young people had opportunities to really contribute and build up their self-worth. So we're talking about doing those kinds of things for young people again. So that's what's happening in my world of youth development right now. Yeah.
And
So
I'm excited because I think there's a really great opportunity for you to will provide services, opportunities, and supports that lead to narrative change on a systemic level. I think a lot of times when we talk about Department of Corrections or anything at the intersection of young people and crime, whenever we try to talk about restorative justice or solutions, there's always this thought of like, well, let's get someone, to who's been through this to come talk to them and advise them not to do it.
right,
When
right,
when we talk about youth development, it has absolutely nothing to do with a list of things not to do.
to
It
do
actually has to
right,
do with a list of things that we want you to do. And so when you
exactly.
talk about when we talked about this in our AYD trainings, a lot of times people couldn't fully understand how to support the development of young people who have had different brushes with the law without giving them a long list of things. But any and every one of us has gained the title or given the situation could be each and every one of us has done something that could present us as a cautionary tale. And for
Right,
whatever
right.
reason, whenever we talk about not offenders, I'm gonna cut that out, I hate that word. Whenever we talk about people who have had brushes with the law, especially Black men, we want to make them a spokesperson and an example of what not to do, when in actuality the fact that they are out and even open to coming to our table to talk means that they are an example of what to do. And
To
so we
do.
don't
Yeah.
just want to
Yeah.
hear about your story, how you ended up here, and how we can prevent young people. Like, no, what did you learn from your story?
Exactly.
What are some
Exactly.
lessons that you could have only learned from this process that you wish you would have known
Hmm.
sooner? What are some resiliencies that you've learned that make you better equipped to navigate this world outside? I think one of the greatest things that happen when someone has had a brush with the law, whether they go through the full process of serving time or just get a slap on the wrist, is they benefit from not being naive. There are
Yeah.
so many, like a part of what keeps this system going is the fact that people who don't interact with the world of corrections are naive.
They're naive.
They
Yes.
couldn't even possibly understand what is
Right.
happening and therefore what is so wrong and what needs to be changed.
Yeah.
They think
Absolutely.
that,
Yeah.
they exist in their little bubble. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited for the narrative change that can come
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that people need to tell their stories a little further away from their current position and more
Hmm.
about who they are, what has grown within them, and their outlook on life, and how people can learn from
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
even incorporate them in not just making change in this realm, but like what can you do for organizational change?
Yeah.
How could you
Yeah.
inform a president and
Yeah.
CEO?
Exactly.
Because you
Exactly.
have a
Exactly.
different way of approaching things, and there are so many people that are hitting their heads against the wall trying to solve, dare I say, first world problems, when all they
Hmm.
have to do is talk to someone who has seen things that they couldn't nearly fathom,
Right.
combine
Right.
expertise, and just keep it moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fix the
Yeah.
problem and keep it moving. So,
I'm thinking about our leaders, and again, why they're impotent when it comes to, solving, quote unquote, solving problems, and even knowing what to do, and even knowing who to bring to the table to solve
mhm,
problems, who they consider the experts. And again, it's people who have no experience, who are just so far removed from what
mhm,
is really going on, and what people are doing. I mean, just the mere fact that you never think about asking young people why they do the things they do.
yes,
It just never occurs to you that, and again, it's because of our adults' view of young people. The young people aren't intelligent. They have nothing to bring to. They have nothing to offer.
mhm,
Yet we act on them, and we want them to do certain things, and or not to do certain things, basically, because
mhm,
we really don't give them opportunities to do things. But it never occurs to us to ask them. But we have all of these people who are supposedly qualified to talk about why young people do what they do.
yeah,
um, and then the answer is, when they don't do what we want them to do, we lock them up, we punish them,
mhm.
we hold them accountable, so,
And
quote unquote.
e-
Yeah.
even something you said earlier in the conversation, and this is true for all people, not just young people, but half the thing when people do something that is negative, and I use that term very loosely,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, we're all going to end up where we're supposed to be, right?
Right. Right.
So, but whenever someone does something that is negative, the reason is boredom. The
Yeah.
amount of money that I have blown at 3 a.m. is simply because I am up and bored, you know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so when we talk to young people and say, why would you do that? Why did you ever do that? And they say that they're bored. Well, then why don't we ask ourselves, why are we providing them with boring schools, boring activities,
Mhm.
boring rec center? Like, what? How do we change
Mhm.
this up? Boring
Yeah.
libraries. Like,
Yeah.
if they're bored, maybe we should work to excite them.
Right. Right. Right.
Simple as that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
we don't even
Yeah.
bother to think about
Yeah.
about doing that. School has been the same since the beginning of time. As someone who went to school and then taught school, it's the same. It's
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that I think about it, what you just said, remember I said that, she did this interview, and they said one was out of because of lack, because of things they need. The other was out of boredom. Having been told that by young people, you would think that the response would be then to address that but the system won't. It won't address. Like
Mm-hmm.
they tell you, what's the problem? Why did you do it? Because I'm bored. Oh, well, that's no excuse. In other words, we've just explained to you why it is we're doing what we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
but the system doesn't have the wherewithal to take that information as valid as their narrative, as their story is valid, and address it. Just like you said,
Mm-hmm.
they'll never do that. They'll never say, okay, then what do we need to do to engage young people so that they are in meaningful ways, so that they aren't bored?
Mm-hmm.
Because if boredom will cause them to do all of these untoward things, then obviously the response should be, then we do things, that's what positive youth development would be. We do things so
Mm-hmm.
that they respond positively, or they develop positive, or that, so that their sense of self-awareness, their sense of mastery and future is addressed, so that,
Mm-hmm.
but we won't do that. We'll just be, well, no, they've got to be held accountable for it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
yeah.
even when I think about young people in boredom, I think about um, our training that we did with DPR's roving leaders. And
Mm-hmm.
when they were just talking about the history of roving leaders, because realistically, when people were thinking more simpler about young people, especially in inner cities, they just wanted to keep young people off the streets.
Off the
That's literally it.
streets.
And
That's
that's,
what they
again,
said.
an
Mhm.
acknowledgement that young people do things when they're bored. So let's keep them off the streets,
Right,
right?
right, right,
And so where'd they go? Department of Rec. Now you get to go to the
right,
rec. And there are
right.
a lot of young people and even some current DPR staff that said, like, the rec really did save my life, right? It kept me
Mm-hmm.
off the street, kept
Mm-hmm.
me from being bored. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm thinking of the roving leaders because it became DPR's job to keep young people off the street, aka keep them from being bored. And so when I think about the
Right.
roving leaders and the block parties and the community connect,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
so the group, and I'm not representing them 100% correctly, but at the end of the day, when I Google it and look at it, I don't like the way that they're represented. But basically,
Yeah.
the roving, just Google it and look
Yeah.
at what their job is to do. You'll see words like, let me just read this. Like, I cringed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
mission of DPR Roving Leaders program is to prevent, neutralize, and control hostile behavior in youth
Wow.
and youth groups through the development of positive relationships between teens, youth, and outreach workers.
Wow.
And when I think about the group of roving leaders that we trained,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't even their.
No.
They would have
No.
never described the young people as hostile.
Hostile.
Are you kidding me? Like, I didn't want to call them out, but we have
Uh,
to be realistic because we just talked about narrative change.
yeah.
What
Yeah.
what I understood the roving leaders to be when they were representing themselves during our training
Mm-hmm.
was that
Mm-hmm.
we make the streets. So yes, we keep some young people off the streets, but for the young people that we don't keep off the streets, we make the streets fun. We do block
Right.
parties.
Right. Right.
We
Right.
bring, we bring fish plates. We
Right.
we do community partnerships. We just do really really cool events so that young
We
people, even
develop
if they're just
relationships with them and all of that. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
where they are. We actually are. We return to the streets because the
Yeah.
streets, you know, ain't such a bad place, and we could actually make
Right.
it really fun and meet the young people where they
Right.
are. I just had to read that description because
That's wild. What?
hostile behavior in youth
That's
groups.
wild.
What do you mean by
Wow.
youth groups? A youth group
Yeah.
I thought was kids that go to church every Tuesday and read the Bible.
Mm. Is that code for gangs?
Exactly. This isn't funny.
Wow.
This is not
Wow.
funny. It's just
Wow.
it's just the disbelief
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
and these are people that were hired to study and support young people. And this
Yeah.
is the mission?
This is the mission. Wow.
Lord have mercy.
And you see why we are where we are.
Yes,
You
I do.
see why we're where we are. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that leads us into the curse word this week. The curse word this week is gambling.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first of all, we need to define gambling because I think there are several definitions. So
Mm-hmm.
the when I thought of gambling, I instantly think of young people and how we gamble with young people. Like for
Mm-hmm.
instance, we send them, like you said, we send young people to, we may do something a little sketchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our child can go to a better school.
Mm-hmm.
And even on the flip side of that, we gamble by sending our kids to schools that we know are underfunded,
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
led by people that don't look like us, that are filled
Yeah.
with teachers that aren't
Yeah.
as attached to the community. To me, that's a
Yeah.
gamble. That's
Yeah.
when I think about gambling. But then again, when we look at the Black community, even as I look at the history of our people, um, gambling is a pastime that has crippled
Mm-hmm.
crippled the intergenerational wealth of families in our communities for
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. It
when I think
actually
about it.
is. Yeah, it actually is. Even when you, I mean, when you look at the textbook definition, which is it involves risking something of value,
Mhm.
including money, but just risking something of value for the chance of winning more than what you risked. So, like you say, when we our children, you know, are valuable, but we risk sending them out. We risk putting them in situations or allowing them to be in situations that really are not necessarily good for them, on the hopes that they will be treated well, on the hopes that
Mhm.
they will be taken care of, on the hopes that they will be educated, on the hopes that there's something that they can get out of it. Again, we send them off to schools every day that are dysfunctional, on the hopes that maybe they will be the ones that can benefit and can grow up and can do better and have a better life. Um, and even in all our lives, we risk doing the things that we do on the side, on the hopes of being able to get something better
Mhm.
than what we have. We risk filling out an application and putting incorrect information on there on the hopes that we will get
Look,
approved.
or we'll
You
get
know
our license sent to us.
yeah. Yeah, we risk that.
Mhm.
And here's the thing, and what I was saying to that before, again, society sets it up so that unless you are privileged, you don't have the means to do anything other than gamble.
Mhm.
It's like I mean, we take out loans and sign up for credit cards and things that we know we don't have the money in the foreseeable future.
Mhm.
Because why? Because we're hoping we'll be able to get, this meal, or we hope we'll be able to cover what we need to cover so that we can just survive.
Yeah.
So for us, in many ways, gambling becomes that survival technique, that way of life. Everything's a gamble.
Mhm.
Everything's a hustle. Um, um, we gamble, on our futures, so that we can survive, hoping that we'll be able in the long run to be around here
Yeah.
for a future. And it develops a mentality, because then we shift and we take chances in our
Mhm.
relationships. We take chances.
I know
Yeah.
over time it morphs your
Mhm.
understanding of potential versus reality.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your reality gets worse and worse, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your potential gets more and more out of reach. So
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
look back at people who were literally gambling, um, years and years and years ago, I don't even know if that store is still there, but
Mhm.
um, I lived on the corner. I lived right off of North Capitol, in like North Capitol, New York Avenue, right? Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
well, more so North Capitol in Rhode Island.
Mhm.
It was maybe 5 years ago. So at the time, it was still pretty Black, around
Yeah.
that area, up and down that
Yeah.
street. I know a lot has changed, but when it came to my neighbors, they used to go to this corner store. The corner store
Mhm.
had a table for people to
Mhm.
sit and do scratch offs, right?
Mm.
The
Mm-hmm.
same neighbor that I would see on the sidewalk earlier in the day. Hey, how you doing, Miss or Mrs. So? Hey, how you doing, baby? You know, have a good day,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, whatever. Even though I'm a grown woman with a grown woman job, you know, how you doing,
Right.
baby? Have a good day. You know, those same people, I would see them doing scratch offs, and I would say hi. They wouldn't say anything back. It was like they were in a trance, just like
Yeah.
zombies. And it's like, you
Yeah.
knew me 3 hours earlier. And
Yeah.
so,
Right.
yeah, and I mean, even when I see it, and unfortunately, at least in in my experience, I have seen that people with big hearts become really good victims to
Yeah.
gambling.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
times, people will gamble to bring about better, not just
Mm-hmm.
for themselves, but for their family. A lot of
Yeah.
times I haven't met many greedy gamblers.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of times it was men who wanted to be providers but for whatever reasons didn't have the means to do so. So they'd go and, shoot pool or roll dice, try to get a little bit of something extra and end up
Mm-hmm.
losing what the family really needed
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
just because he was hoping that he could get, the groceries and maybe some gifts,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know um in my experience, that's what
Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
a lot.
I'll never forget, and many of you probably know this play, Raisin in the Sun, Lorraine Hansberry,
Hmm.
and in the play, it centers around, or the main, I guess, point of attack centers around this man who wants better for his family. His father just passed, and he left a large insurance that his mom was going to buy a house with, and they were going to move and have a better life. And so he wanted to go into business with part of the money. And so what he does is he gives part of the money to a friend who's going to go into business with him, and they're supposed to meet this guy to set up the business or whatever. And um, this guy Willie ends up taking the money, and he goes off with it, with a portion of it. So again,
Hmm.
he's gambling. He's trying to have a better future. Um, and I saw this movie as a child with Sidney Poitier and Ruby Dee,
Hmm.
and I was old enough to understand what was happening in the movie. Um, I was old enough to understand that this guy really had an opportunity. Um, to do better for his family, and he was really hoping, and he was really trying, and to see that it didn't pay off, and how
Hmm.
that devastated him. And he still had hope even when the money was gone, even when there really was no hope. There was still this sense of, you know how can I move forward. And I think about people
Yeah.
today, like you say, they're in a trance. You can't talk them out of it, you can't wake them up, because it's the and the system knows that. The system knows that. I mean, when you look at the lottery, and you look at people who literally do gamble in that sense, and people who become, for lack of a better word, become addicted or drawn
Hmm.
to it, it's like no matter what happens, no matter how many times you lose, there's still this sense of
Yeah.
adrenaline, this sense of hope, that something's going to turn around. And then you begin to tie it to faith. I can remember my mom, used to always enter the what is it, that sweepstakes that they come around, and the not Reader's Digest, what is it? It's the one they bring the check around and you win. They'll come to your home,
Okay.
and you know what I'm talking about. It'll come to
I
me in a
know
minute.
exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about. I've
yeah,
seen
it'll
the
it'll
image
it'll
over
come
and
to
over
me.
in my head of
Yeah,
winners.
you see the ads on it. I think Steve
Hmm.
Harvey was one of the most recent people to be a spokesperson for it. But she would always enter it, and you could enter it for free. But they would send her these things. Well, you're one step closer to winning. We may be coming to your door, your neighborhood soon, with a check for you. And I mean, and she just, year after year after year, Olivia, she just believed and believed that she was going to hit it, that she was going to hit it, that she was
Hmm.
going to get it. So even though she wasn't putting out any money, that sense of gambling, that sense of faith that something is going uh, to come of that. So again, when I look at the definition, it involves risking something of value, and your
Hmm.
faith and your hope sometimes is the only thing you have of value. and you put that forth on the chance that you're going to win something or be rewarded,
Mhm.
for that sense of faith and that sense of value. Yeah, so I mean, like I said, for years uh, she did that until she
Mhm.
finally decided, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, and she just stopped. And it was hard for me to watch that because, again, my mom, being an older person, older people, they believe, they have their faith, and they're
Mhm.
on that. And
And you
she
can
even
find a
went,
Bible verse for
yeah,
anything.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what's so interesting about it. So I
yeah,
get it.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So, but yeah, and even today, we still, as a people, we still gamble. We
Mhm.
gamble that, white folks are going to do right by us.
Mhm.
We invest in this system. We join your military. We go and we take a risk that hoping that what we're doing is for a righteous cause, and
Mhm.
and we, again, we're risking something of
And
value that we have.
and here's the thing though with gambling, in all cases, it's a short return on investment.
Yeah.
Like it leads you into thinking about people's desire for instant gratification. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily saying that it is a weakness, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
when we look at our community and the constant pressures of oppression, or even if we look globally, imperialism, colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
financial strain, political corruption, all of that, at some point you just get so tired
Yeah.
of constantly having the short end of the stick. You
Yeah.
want the long end of the stick and you
Yeah.
want it now. I've been
Now.
doing this too
Yeah.
long. I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
win the lottery now. And
Yeah.
so it's easy to see how gambling is then transferable to other parts of our lives. I don't
Yeah.
want to wait until I have money for
Yeah.
a private school education. I want my child to go to a good school now.
Now.
I
Right.
don't
Right.
want to I've dealt with so many jobs and trying to build wealth. I want the money now. I'm about to flip
Mm-hmm.
something real
Mm-hmm.
quick. I'm about to
Mm-hmm.
see who I
Mm-hmm.
can talk to. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want big money fast,
Yeah.
basically, right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I want the record deal now. I want the relationship now. I want the marriage now. I want it now. I'm not
And
gonna
why?
necessarily wait for the right man to come around. I want the baby
Yeah.
now. I want the
Now.
baby now with the man that
Exactly.
I got now.
Exactly.
You know what
Exactly.
I mean? So
Yeah.
it's easy
Yeah.
for that to be e- that desire is so transferable, especially in our community. And I really do think it links to not having what you want for so long. First and foremost, in our community, the way that we raise our kids,
Mm-hmm.
we say no, 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 no for 18 years. And then when they
Yep.
turn 18 and go out into the real world, the world tells them no, 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 no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's no wonder why it's so easy for me to want to feel something now. So I'm gonna snort this line with you.
Yep. Yep.
I'm gonna steal this car. I deserve a
I'm
car
gonna
right
steal
now.
this car. Yep.
You know?
I'm gonna run and get this gun, and I'm gonna jack something off of somebody because I want it now. And we also have this idea that young people do not see all of the gambling that we do in that
Mm-hmm.
respect. They do not see us striving and making sacrifices that in a hope for a larger return, and it never happening.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we think that young people do not know what's going on in the world. Some
Yeah.
kind of way we think that we can tell them, if you go out, if you get an education, if you follow these guidelines, if you do this and you do that, you will be successful, when there is no apparent evidence in our lives of what we're saying to them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's one of those things, well, do as I say, not as I do, or whatever will happen for you, even if it didn't happen for me. But we're not saying that. We're
Mm-hmm.
saying to them, if you do these things, this will happen. But there's no evidence of that. For most of
None.
us, many of
Yeah.
us cannot tell our children, well, see, this is where I am. I got here and I've got this success. Everything you see is a result of my hard work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a result of this. You have everything that you need. So what is it? We're gambling. When we tell our kids that, in some hope that they're going to take that in and believe that, but there's no evidence of it.
Yeah.
And so, right, it just only makes sense that young people, you know, um, I have this thing that is sort of a guidepost right now in terms of all of the work that I'm doing, and it's called the truth of things. And what it is I think that when we have conversations with young people, when we talk about the narrative, when we talk about the work that we're doing with young people, we have to do everything today keeping in mind the truth of things. So
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to tell young people um, which way to go, what to do, the best options, or we have to consider the truth of things. We have to consider what's actually going
Yeah.
on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have to consider all the structural barriers. We have to talk about white supremacy, systemic racism. We have to give them everything within the context of the truth of things. And
Mm-hmm.
even the work that we do, we can say, for instance, in the juvenile justice system, we cannot do that work blind or absent of the knowledge and understanding that there is a system in place that is intentional, that
Mm-hmm.
intentionally wants to incarcerate and enslave people. That's the truth of things.
Yes.
So even if I'm going to work in this system to try to make things better for young people and whatever, even within the system, I have to understand the nature of this system.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the kind of conversations that we need to have with young people. We're not honest with them, we're not truthful with them. So somewhere along the line, they know the conversations we aren't having.
Yeah.
They know, and every time we do that, we're gambling.
Yes,
We're
we
we're
are.
gambling that well, somehow they won't know, how somehow they won't find
Mm-hmm.
out, how somehow they like we can pretend it's not true. We can convince ourselves that you know everything that this country does is right. We can convince ourselves that our vote counts, even though we have a government that's is using our tax dollars in ways that we would never use them.
Yeah.
Um, Even though even our local governments are uh, imposing additional traumas on us. I mean, you elect a person, and the first thing she does is she has an extra 300 to 400 traffic lights or traffic cameras put up installed. I mean, where do we order that? Where do we request that as a people? And so that when we say, okay, our vote, we gamble every time we vote, hoping that,
Yeah.
our vote will give us immediate returns. And yet we as a people, I mean, we cannot say, and I say that, I put this out there to people a lot. I say, what has changed? I mean, we voted, we had Obama in for 8 years. What has effectively changed for
Yeah.
Black people in America? And yet still, we keep hoping, we keep gambling, we keep sacrificing our good faith. The only thing we have of value right now is our hope and our trust, and hoping that we will get a
Mm-hmm.
return. And we can't even get a long term
Yeah.
return. I mean, we look over the years, and I think, when we look at young people, we have to think about what it is they know, what it is that they are really aware of. And, is there a replacement for the behavior of gambling? Is there an
I
upside?
know. Like,
uh,
what need does that meet? I think for some people, when they gamble for whatever reason, it it creates the illusion of control, or
yeah,
the illusion that you are
yeah,
one step away
yeah,
from
yeah,
control, because anything could
yeah,
change at any given
yeah,
moment, and then I'm on the winning side of things.
yeah, yeah. And in a way, it is like the only thing for many people that gives them a sense of independence
Hmm.
or control. It's the only thing that gives them a sense, well, I can do this. I can gamble over here. I can and with a hope of a return, because gambling involves a it involves that you voluntarily commit to something,
Mm-hmm.
so there is that element of, well, I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it into this,
Yeah.
or I'm going to take this and I'm going to get this. So it's like one of those last ditch things that you can actually do, um, to give you some kind of hope, because, and here's the thing, again, you're risking something of value. So that means that you in some place, when we talk about self-worth, the need of self-worth, in some place it says, okay, I do have this,
Mm-hmm.
I do have this element of value, and I can take this and I can risk this. I can put this out with a hope of getting some type of return. So in a sense,
Yeah.
it's connecting to your need for self worth, and it's connecting to your need for independence and autonomy, or control of your life, or control of a situation, or control of a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
or control of whatever. There is that sense. Um,
And I
and the
think
question is,
that, sorry, go.
no, no,
You
no,
said
go
the
ahead, go ahead.
question is,
No, because it's coming up. Go ahead.
because to me, I feel like there's at least for me, because Mustafa, you know me,
Hmm.
I will take the risk.
Hmm.
I will take the risk. I will make the decision just to, and and from the outside looking in, it can look risky, right? To
Hmm.
only apply
Hmm.
for one university that you want to get into. To
Hmm.
even when I got my degree from Clemson, that was the only grad school that I applied to, and I just knew I was going to get in. So
Hmm.
the but here's the thing: I didn't. You have to do it with a certain energy, because if you do it with a
Yes.
certain energy, you'll do it a different way. So, for
Right.
instance, when I applied only to Howard, I didn't. I wasn't betting on the situation. I didn't apply saying, "Well, I hope they really let me into the school because I really." No, I bet on myself.
Right.
So you
Right.
shouldn't.
Right.
So I feel like when it comes to things like the lottery or gambling by sending our kids to schools that we know don't care about them, you're betting on the situation as
Right.
opposed to betting on yourself. Because if you bet on yourself, then when you put yourself in the ring that you're going to win because you put your
Right.
best self
Right.
forward. And so
Right. Right.
at the end of the day, no matter what, life is a gamble, but you just have to
Right.
know from the outside looking in, betting on yourself and betting on the situation look exactly the same. I know there have been
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
times
Yeah.
where my parents have been looking at me like, oh my gosh, but I knew I was betting on myself. So no, only bet on yourself. Do not bet on the situation. So for
Yeah.
instance,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you are going to, and I tell this to my women friends all the time, right? If
Hmm.
you know that this is a great guy, but but you're still not 100%, well, make that decision knowing that you are going to excel whether the relationship fails or it succeeds. Don't go
Exactly.
into it hoping that it
Exactly.
works. You
Exactly.
get what I'm saying?
Exactly. That's like for a graduation present. We gave a young man $2,000, and
Hmm.
he said, "Well, can I invest in crypto or whatever?" We said, "You can do whatever you want to do with that, because
Hmm.
you don't have any obligations. This is free money. And at the very least, you will learn about investment."
Hmm.
And so, again, you're not betting on the situation, you're betting on the person and
Yeah,
what they're going to get out of it. And it's going to be a learning experience, whether they lose the money or not. So it's
absolutely.
almost like, don't, don't, don't bet something that you cannot, or that you can't afford to lose in that sense.
Hmm.
And if you're betting on yourself, it's almost like saying, okay, when we ask young people, what do you want to be? Well, I want to be an engineer. And if I'm not an engineer, then my second choice, I'll fall back on being a teacher. I say, well, you can guarantee that you'll be a teacher,
Yeah.
because that's the thing that you're sure about. That's you. That's what you've identified that you can do no matter what. But
Hmm.
if you want to be an engineer, then you have to bet on being an engineer, put all of your ducks in there, and because you're investing
Yes.
yourself in that and you're working on yourself. So I think that's
Hmm.
a really good analogy when you say bet on yourself and not on the
Hmm.
situation. And
And
that's
that,
the
people,
positive.
is the definition of manifestation.
Exactly.
That is what
Ex-
everyone is talking about. It's
exactly.
not about if
Exactly.
I think it long enough, if I think it hard enough, it will come. No, if you
Right.
and we said it in the first episode, you don't get out of life what you want, you get out of
Right.
life what you are. And
Exactly.
so if you want to win the lottery, there's nothing wrong with winning the lottery, but you are going to make way more money if you think, breathe, and act like a money magnet than you
Exactly.
are if you go down to the corner store every single day at 3 o'clock to do scratch offs, because you're doing it with the wrong energy. You're
Yeah.
relying on the
Yeah. Yeah.
situation instead of relying on yourself. So
Exactly.
I think, and we've successfully walked through the way back now. So
I was getting ready to say
no
exactly
matter
that.
what,
That is the
you
yeah.
have to gamble, and we can
Yeah.
actually let's do the way back. Let's break it down
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
our analytical listeners, right? So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
admitted that we got a problem. We talked about it
Mm-hmm.
for a while,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We skipped this, especially as adults. How do we apologize to young people? Because we gamble with young people
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
all the time. The amount of young people who, like, for instance, and I feel like a lot of people have this, even me with my parents when we were younger, you kind of get this sense of betrayal when you find out that you are or were broke. you know,
Yeah.
like I remember looking back at one point and my mom was telling us about a vacation that we went on, and I was like, wait, y'all weren't good for it? Like, y'all didn't have because I would have never known. And at some and a
Yeah.
part of you wishes that you had known. And I think a great way for
Yeah.
parents to apologize for it is, instead of trying to save face, instead of pretending like everything is okay, instead of acting like you don't know that these lights could go out at any given
Mm-hmm.
second,
Mm-hmm.
including young people in your struggle, and not in the way
Yeah.
that's going to bring them anxiety or worry. I think it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
hard for young people to worry anyway because they aren't yet vested, right?
Right.
But
Right.
being real about what is happening, like
Mm-hmm.
I can think about so many of my friends that they can remember the moment that they realized that they were quote unquote poor.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they can pinpoint the second that they
Yep. Yep.
realize that,
Yep.
and
I realized it. Yeah.
it comes with a betrayal. And I think
Yeah.
there needs to be an apology
Yeah. There
for
does.
the
There does.
dynamics that create that moment.
Yeah, and the thing is that when we and to all of the parents, that are listening, when you make that apology, when you make that admission, young people can accept that.
Mm-hmm.
They can accept that, they can embrace that, and it really kind of opens the door for a more solid relationship with that young person. Um, because no matter what we do, there's always this innate love that they're going to have for us. Now,
Yeah.
even despite that love, if we don't treat them well, they can build up sort of I could say a tolerance to our suffering, so that when we end up suffering later on in life, it really doesn't bother them that much. But we can, if earlier in life if we apologize, and we can build a relationship where we give them the opportunity, to forgive, and the fixing it is letting them know, um, not only that we go through struggles when we're going through struggles, but that they
Mm-hmm.
see us fix it, they see us make it to the other side. That's more beneficial for them and the struggles that they're going to go through, to understand, okay, yeah, this stuff happens, but we make it through, and this is
Mm-hmm.
how we make it through. And I think that's part of the apology process, and the helping young people to develop. They need to see
Mm-hmm.
our struggles, and they need to see how we figure it out. It's, just like, in one of the trainings, people say, never let your kids see you argue. That you also, I say, well, no, they should see us disagree, but they should also learn how we resolve those
Yeah.
conflicts. So it's, if we can't resolve conflicts, no, we don't want them to see abuse. But if it's okay to have disagreements, and for them to learn how we resolve those disagreements. And so, as we struggle through life and we go through things, and we're having hard times,
Mm-hmm.
how do our parents work through it? How do we teach young people, yeah, we're going through this, but we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're going, and that's what we do. We figure it out.
And this can be across the youth development world, even in
Mm-hmm.
youth programs. I think it's important for teachers to be honest with students about what works and what doesn't, what has failed, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's important for what Department of Juvenile Services to be
Mm-hmm.
open and honest with young people. This is how we've been doing things, and it's
Yeah.
clearly not working for y'all.
Yeah.
Instead
Yeah.
of, we know that things aren't going well and we're working to fix it, because
Right.
that separates them from the solution when they're
It
actually a part
does.
of the
It does.
solution. If
Exactly.
if it weren't for them, solutions, there would be no need for a solution, if that makes any
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
understand that this can apply across the across the youth development world. Even with my 2 year old, I was tucking him in the other day, and I was like, you know what? I know I've been impatient the past couple of days
Mm-hmm.
because I took a gamble. I
Yeah.
defaulted and I said,
Yeah.
stop
Yeah.
that, sit down, instead
Yeah.
of what do you need right now? What's
Yeah.
going on? You know?
Yeah.
So just knowing that we can apply this everywhere in our
Mm-hmm.
lives.
Yeah. Absolutely. 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 And then when we commit to that, we can forgive and move on. I think it's interesting. I didn't know where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. When we started this, but
Mhm.
um, I think that that's it's really worth considering to think about that. And so how would we journal this? I think one of the ways is to just kind of think about, where are we taking risks in our lives, and what are we taking the risk on? Is it on the
Mhm.
situation, or are we taking gambles? Are we taking risk on ourselves? And what are we teaching young people? Because young people, where they falter, where they're suffering right now, is because they're taking risks on situations, on things that they really can't control, be it out of boredom, be it out of whatever. And we want them, if they're going to take risks, we want them to learn to take risks on themselves in terms of challenging themselves, and learning from their experiences and getting
Mhm.
better at it. Because some kind of ways, they do that anyway. They learn from what they do, and they kind of get better at it. We want them to get better at those things that are going to make them stronger,
Mhm.
um, that are going to make them, more successful, more resilient. Um, and we want them to be creative, and being creative
Absolutely.
is also taking a risk. When you creating a different way, a different way of thinking, a different way of growing. If you know artists, they say artists take risks all the time, and it's because they are taking risk on themselves, on their
Mhm.
that innate ability, talent, and desire in themselves to make something new, to make something better. So I think
Mhm.
one of the things we can talk about or journal about is, where are we taking risk in our lives, and what risks do we want to take on ourselves,
Yeah.
that we are willing to falter and learn from and get better. What are those things that we know we want to do? What are those things it goes back to, again, what are those things we would do, take a risk on, if we weren't afraid? you
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely.
so yeah,
And I
yeah.
and I I like this journal idea because when you go, let's say you journal about a situation that you're betting on, right? And then
Hmm.
you answer, how can I change my approach so that I'm betting on myself? I think you'll see that the pivot is not as large as
Hmm.
large as you think. It's easy to
Hmm.
go from betting on a situation to betting on yourself. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think that's really cool, and I think you'll realize that if you take care of yourself, the situation will take care of itself.
If
So
so,
you don't even have to
absolutely,
think about the situation. So
absolutely.
when I started thinking about victims of gambling, every victim that I know, everyone that I know that passed away penniless did
Hmm.
so trying to create more
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
people that they love.
yep,
And it's just sad that that the
yeah,
big hearts get got by
yep,
this
yep,
particular curse.
yep, yep, yep.
Um
And this system counts on it. It
I
counts on
know.
it. They prey on
They
it. Yeah.
prey on it. And I mean, especially when you want people to get, how do I say this? When you want to bring out people's addictive tendencies, you
Mm-hmm.
target their pain
Yep.
every time.
Every
And
time.
people's perception of the spirit of lack
Mm-hmm.
amongst their family and their communities will get them to gamble
Yep.
every single
Every
time.
time.
And
Yep.
that decision is actually intentional. They know that they are betting against themselves in the
Mm-hmm.
hopes that it will pay off for someone that they
Yep.
love.
Yeah.
Um, like
Yeah.
they know they don't have the money for this scratch off,
Yep.
like they know they don't have the money to, and they know that when they walk in, they may have money for one scratch off. They know they're not gonna get one,
Yep.
you
You
know.
know that. Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep. Because I mean,
so
think about it. If you're gonna win, you're gonna win once you get one. So
mhm,
why do you? I mean, it's like people who buy 20 lottery tickets. Why are you buying 20 the same? Like you buy 20 Powerballs. Why are you buying 20? If you're
mhm,
gonna win, you only need one, the winning one. So the
yeah,
idea that you go in and spend $100 on lottery tickets is because you know
mhm.
you won't win with one, two, three, four, five. Keep the numbers going. So
and
again, that
you'll
energy. Mm-hmm.
and you'll take that you'll take on that burden so the people around you don't have to do it.
Exactly.
I like you almost go to the corner store with a job to do, because if I do this, I get to
Right.
take care. Y'all didn't even have to
Yep.
worry about you.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
oh my god,
Yeah.
it
It's
hurts your heart to
insidious. It
think
does.
of.
It's insidious, and
Yeah.
people even feel that way. They say, once I hit this, like it's gonna happen. Once I get this,
Hmm.
we gonna be straight. Everybody gonna be straight.
Hmm. And it's
And
like you create. We live in a system, especially for us, that it creates pain so that they can then prey on it. And
yeah.
even when I look back to slavery and the making of a slave,
Mm-hmm.
they inflicted such pain so then they could use the effects of that to control.
Yeah.
And it's just happening in different ways
In different
over
ways.
and over and
Yeah.
over and over
Yeah.
again. Even when I look, and I've talked about this before, but even when I look at how the welfare system, a lot of times, especially when it was first introduced,
Mhm.
replaced the role of the man
Right.
in the household. But for a man to be removed from your family, that's a painful
Yeah.
experience. And
Yeah.
then we create the welfare system to then prey on that. This
Yeah.
isn't to say that food stamps, welfare, SNAP, all of that aren't beneficial. I'm
Right.
saying the original sales pitch for it
Mm-hmm.
required some very painful experiences
Yeah.
for its
It did. Yeah.
original
Yeah.
customers,
Yeah.
because before you couldn't even, no one really could understand the idea of a fatherless home unless your
Right.
dad was on drugs, in
Yeah.
jail or whatever. But even if he was on drugs or in jail, not on jail, even if he was you know, on drugs, out running the streets. What, he still slept at home. You still
Yep.
had your daddy.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
He was just a drunk version of
Yeah.
himself, or a high version of
He
himself,
was just
or a
he
different
might
version of
he might have
himself.
been no count, but hey, he was still
He
there.
was
Yeah.
there. You
Yeah.
know what
He
I
was
mean?
there.
And
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
idea to the yeah. And I'm gonna write this. I'm going
Yeah.
to write this about the slow, insidious removal and replacement of the black male
Mm-hmm.
figure in households, because it happens. We People have blamed it on the prison system,
Mm-hmm.
drugs, alcohol, but even I mean even down south, with like before the at the beginnings of the Great Migration,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Black men are sharecroppers or musicians in the church. And
Yeah.
so I either stay down here and sharecrop and get lynched, or I leave my family and go to Chicago and hopefully maybe bring them, but not really. I don't got the money to
Right.
bring y'all up there.
Right. Right.
I barely made it up here
Right.
myself. You know what I mean?
And even
So
then, as you said so eloquently, they were gambling on themselves. They were betting
yeah.
on themselves. And when I go up
Mm-hmm.
here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this job as this. I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to be able to what? Help my loved ones. You know?
Exactly.
Yep.
We just been through a
Yeah.
lot, man. We've been through a
Yeah.
lot. We have
Yeah.
been, and that's why I'm so happy that each and every one of our episodes incorporate the way back.
Mm-hmm.
So, because it
Yeah.
is so easy to talk about those different stories and sit here and cry, but
Yeah.
we can go from betting on the situation to
Mm-hmm.
betting on ourselves.
Themselves. Yep.
Half the decisions that I make that are risky is because I know for a fact that I'm gonna be good regardless, no
Yep.
matter how this turn out.
Yep.
So, if we employed that, um, if we employed that attitude as a people,
As a people. Yep.
my God,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
my God,
Yep. If we were to unite and bet on ourselves,
that's a
yeah,
bet we would win
win. Yep.
instantly.
Hands
Talk,
down.
talk about
Yep.
instant gratification.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean,
Whew.
look at all of the things that when that actually happened. You know, like Tulsa. You know, Black Wall Street. Look at what happened when we actually did bet
Mm-hmm.
on ourselves. Okay, you don't want to deal with us? Okay, we'll go off. We'll take a chance and we'll do this on our own. We'll bet. That really wasn't about the situation. That was about betting on ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, that was
Absolutely.
about betting on ourselves. You know, we can
Mm-hmm.
do this, because of who we are, and knowing who we are, so.
Yeah. And so we just have
Hmm.
to understand we got to roll the dice anyway. We just need to know how to roll it.
That's it.
That
That's it.
that's really it. And even when
That's
I
it.
look, and honestly, when we look at social movements across the globe, even when I look at like what is it, the Soweto riots,
Hmm.
young people are the only people that are willing to bet on themselves.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? In every single case, that's what it is. And when the successes come,
Mm-hmm.
it's because young people are betting on themselves. Sitting at the lunch counters,
Mm-hmm.
is young people betting on themselves.
Mm-hmm. And we've
Hmm.
even talked about the transition from adolescence to adulthood. And you say in our training, something happens.
Hmm.
Something happens. And I'm sure it's a lot of little somethings that happen in the
Hmm.
same vein.
Hmm.
But I will say, as an adult, we bet on situations a
Yeah, we
lot.
do. We do.
Like even down to our jobs,
We
we can
do.
get fired at any given time. But
Yep.
I bet you one thing: I
Yep.
got a car, I got a house, I got things that I have to pay off continuously. I have student like
Yeah.
we will do that, and young people will say that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to college, and then we
Right.
look at them like they are crazy for not wanting
Yep.
to be us when we don't even want to be us.
Right.
He's so mad at these girls.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
We're
We
not
think
willing
they're
to tell
crazy.
them
Right.
that we gambled and we
And we
lost.
lost. We lost.
If anything, we encourage you to gamble alongside us in the same way that we did. And when things
Right.
don't work out, what they say, Mustafa, life's not
Well,
fair.
life's not fair. Life's not fair. What the hell you mean? I didn't have to do this. Yeah.
When really, I didn't bet on myself when I should have.
Right. Yeah.
I
I
bet
should
on a
have bet on my.
situation.
Yep.
I
Yep.
trusted what other people told me, even though they
Yep.
were not in positions that
Yep.
I wanted to one day be
Yep.
in. And here I
Yep.
am, the
And think
next
about
generation of them.
and think about how many times a person says, "Well, I want to do this, or I want to do my art, and I want to do that." And we say, "No, you should do something more practical. No, you should do this. No, you should do that."
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're giving them situations to bet on for
Yeah.
success. When they're saying, "Well, I really want to do this. I really want to do that," they're saying, "I want to bet on myself. This is what I want to do." Well, nah, I don't think it's practical because you won't make any money that way, or you won't do
Mm-hmm.
this that way. You want, yeah.
When I tell, because I like my job, but I'm the happiest when I'm doing this podcast. I
Mm-hmm.
really am because
Mm-hmm.
I'm betting on myself. Like
Let me
that
share this
really.
with you. Let me share this
Mm-hmm.
with you because this was like an epiphany for me. I was talking to a young lady. She's an adult now. She just got married in Costa Rica. She moved off to Costa Rica, met a guy, and got married, whatever. But she's writing a book, and she was talking about when she gets a first edition or whatever. And I had told her about some plays I had written, and she asked me. She said, "Well, when you wrote your plays, who did you get to review or to help you edit it?" She said, "I said what?" She said, "When you wrote your plays, who did you get
Mm-hmm.
to read it or review it?" And something occurred to me. Whenever I wrote a play, I was working with a group of young people or actors, and I wrote the play and we performed it. I said, and the light went off. I said, I've written over maybe 300 songs, children's songs and stuff. Every song that I wrote, I said, I didn't get anybody to review it.
Mm.
I wrote it, I enjoyed the process, and then I performed it. I didn't even what, and people liked it. I said, I didn't, whether, it never occurred to me whether people, it was a consideration whether people would like it or not.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me whether people would like my plays or not. I wrote the plays because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was a process where I created the music, and then I thought about all the most successful musicians: Michael Jackson, Prince, Stevie Wonder. These people didn't write songs and then go say, listen to this and tell me what you like
Mm-hmm.
about it. Give me a critique. What do I need to change? I say artists and creatives, they create out of their desire and their love, and they
Yeah.
enjoy it, and it's pure. And guess what? The world accepts it. Either they accept it or
Yeah.
don't, but you don't know who doesn't like it. All you know is that it becomes number one, number two. People like what you do. And I said, oh my God, talk about again about manifestation. Talk about
Yeah.
again belief in yourself and loving yourself. And I said, damn. And I started thinking about this work, how many different types of positions I may have applied for, hoping someone would like and think that what I'm doing is important and
Mm-hmm.
real, and to hell with those people. I know that this is meaningful. I
Exactly.
know that, so it just changed at that moment. A light went on because it never occurred to me while I was young, when I was doing it and writing and creating it, I didn't care whether anybody else, it never even crossed my mind that somebody should review it
Absolutely.
and approve it or whatever. I did it because that's what came from me. And I'm saying if we can keep our young people there at that
Mm-hmm.
place where they are enjoying themselves and their own creation and who they are, we can change it overnight. We can change it overnight.
Absolutely.
Overnight.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think everything that you said applies to everyone except for Tyler Perry. Leave him alone. He's somewhere minding his business. He just got shot. But okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
on that note, okay, bye. Yeah, I'm excited to
Yeah,
get into these journal prompts. And we are really happy that you were able to join us for episode 6. And we will see you
yeah.
next week for
See you
Generational
next
Curse
time.
Word.
Take care, folks.